Good morning and welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg and Judson Press Presents. My guest today is Reverend Dr. Denise Janssen. So I'll start off. I am Meg from Ministry Mondays with Meg, and I serve here at ABHMS as the National Coordinator for Ministry Life and the American Baptist Personnel Services. I am an ordained American Baptist pastor. Um, I've served in a couple of regions, upstate New York and the Great Rivers region, and I have been here at ABHMS for the last 2.5 years. Um, Reverend Dr. Denise Janssen has graciously agreed to come and chat with me this morning about her incredibly busy ministry. Dr. Denise, would you go ahead and, for those who don't know you, tell everybody a little bit about who you are and your ministries, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Sure, of course. My name is Denise Janssen, as you said, and I'm currently serving as Associate Professor of Christian Education and Interim Assistant Dean at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia. And I also serve as the Executive Director of the Resource Center. I manage some grants for the school. Let's see, what else do I do? I'm supply preaching for the next 4 weeks. The plate is full, but I have in the past been an American Baptist pastor in my full-time life. And I've also served in fundraising and grant writing for a number of other kinds of institutions, as well as serving as a United Methodist pastor for a while.
And when do you sleep?
Well,
right. It's one of those like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, you're
like, if you've been around for long enough, right? You can have this collection of stuff that you've done, and over I don't want to say how many years, for 28 years since I was ordained.
Oh my gosh.
And that you can do some things in that amount of time, apparently.
Right. Yeah. And then you kind of look back and go, oh, yeah. What was I thinking? But
yeah, I guess I did all that, huh?
Yeah, I guess. And I'm still alive. All right. That kind of thing. So on top of all of your roles at Proctor and interim assistant dean and your executive, all of this, you've written, how many books have you written?
5 total.
5. Okay.
3 with Judson.
Okay.
And
do you want to give titles of like all 5?
Sure, if you want. The first, let's see if I can do this from memory. The first one, the most recent one, is Pressing Forward, Faith, Culture, and African American Youth. That's a Judson Press book, came out in May, with co-author Carmichael Crutchfield, who is a wonderful colleague. The book prior to that was one that we did through Friendship Press when I was editorial director there, or just prior. And that one is called, you know what? I'm not going to remember it. I'll come back to it. It's the Facilitator's Guide for United Against Racism. And it's a curriculum to help people talk about race in some productive ways. Prior to that, Educating for Redemptive Community through Wiffenstock was a Festschrift, a book in honor of 2 professors. And involved them actually in some writing that we did to think creatively about what it means to be a redemptive community. And then prior to that, Reclaimed Faith in an Emerging Generation, which was the book form of the dissertation research I did for my PhD, dealing with youth in the church and how we can best help them to thrive in faith. We interviewed some folks as young adults who had been youth, who I call all in, if you will, in faith, and were again as young adults, which is fairly uncommon. And just trying to identify what are some characteristics, what helped them to do that. And then prior to that, Fostering Faith which is teaching and learning in the Christian church. And that's a basic Christian ed book.
And I will put a link to your Facebook page
Sure.
in the comments. So, because I didn't warn you that there would be the pop quiz, so that anyone who's interested in getting more information about you and your books can hop on over to your Facebook page and check that information out. So the majority of your research then centers around youth.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
Was that because of your own experience? What drew you? What drew you into that?
Yeah. So by the time I was probably 30, I had done like 250 camps and conferences as a youth first, and then more recently toward that date as one who was leading them, a counselor, other sorts of camp pastor, director, those sorts of things. And so in that experience, I watched how in settings where people were intentional about faith, it was possible for people to grow, to explore new ideas, to feel called, to sense they had a voice. And in all of those contexts, what I saw were adults who were incredibly helpful and other adults who were well-meaning who weren't very helpful in terms of guiding youth, in terms of giving them space, in terms of recognizing that it's just as much their church as it is yours. Right? Adults like to believe it's more mine than right. So part of why I was so intrigued by writing about this period, and really it's all faith transitions in life, but adolescence is where I focused to this point. Like how can the church more effectively do what it says it wants to do, which is help people to be involved in a relationship with God that's meaningful and enables them to be and do more than they thought they could.
I get that, especially having served as a pastor, it was all, we want more young people. We want more young people. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, but you've got to give them a reason, to be, you got to give them ownership in this as well. Or they're not gonna be here.
Nobody likes to be told what to do. People want to live into their call. So if someone is called to be a teacher, why wouldn't we equip them, even as they're young, to live into that call?
Yeah. So in your books, do you tackle any of those more sensitive, topics, especially for adults? The LGBT issues. Now, how our identities, whether someone identifies as non-binary, cis, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to some extent. I won't say it's the focus, but certainly, adults need to understand that they don't get a vote in someone else's life, even though maybe they did in their own children's lives, right? They don't get a vote in someone else's life. So affirming God's creation is very good, is the bottom line. And how we do that in the lives of adolescents, in the lives of families with children, in the lives of older folks. I mean, all of that is what it means to be a person of faith and to do this faith life that God has called us to.
I appreciate that very much as a mom, as a former pastor, we can't pretend that it's easy. I understand it's difficult, and especially when you're dealing with some older adults with this is the way it's always been, but I think if the church can be that place where you can't just say, where you say welcome, and listen, because that listening is so important. I think we go a long way just to get that part right.
Absolutely. Our welcome comes with an asterisk too much of the time, right?
Yeah.
And that's not that's not biblical.
Right. So have you put these, you said one of these books was a result of your dissertation. So you're able to put some of these things into practice
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And they work,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
oh yeah, exactly. So when I got my PhD, I had been a youth pastor, an associate pastor in a variety of roles bivocationally for 20 years at that point. And really, I mean, I knew that my questions needed more tools to find more answers for them, but I have never wanted to be an ivory scholar, ivory tower scholar. Help me.
no, you got it. You're fine.
Some days I need to say I am smart, really.
Right.
An ivory tower scholar who only writes to a closed body of people. Yeah. I don't want that. I want my scholarship to matter to the church. Yes. If it doesn't, why would I waste my time doing it, right? So every book I write is intensely practical and has immediate application to the local church. Which is the book we just did, right?
Yeah.
Pressing Forward comes with study guide, videos. I mean, these are all free content that Judson provides that a local church can use to talk about these issues.
Which is phenomenal that you go, okay, not only am I giving you a book to read, I'm giving you the resources and here, let's practice this. Let's try this, because I know how scary that gets, where you're like, well, what if no one comes? What if we do this and no one shows up? But what if they do? And you're never gonna know. But I love that you provide more than just the book. You've got the resources too. I think that's so essential, especially for the church today.
We're really grateful to Judson for the vision they have to make those kinds of resources available. Because really, I mean, the book is one piece of it, but giving people tools to be able to use it, I think, is important. And Judson really had that vision.
Yeah. And so as we go forward as the church, do you think, are they getting it? Are our congregations getting it, that this is what it has to change? I mean, there's the whole, you remember the Phyllis Tickle quote, every 500 years in the yard sale of the church thing. The COVID was a couple of years late, but I think that was our big, the church has changed. So now what?
Yeah. And frankly, on that Sunday, on Sunday, March 15 in 2020, when everything changed, when everyone had to be virtual all of a sudden, those people we overlooked became our greatest assets, because they were tech is their life, right? It's not a thing that's a novelty. It's part of how they live and communicate and work in the world. And so, if we just look at who is best equipped to help us as a congregation to meet at that point, it's the younger generation, most of whom this is natural for them. This is normal. And in some ways, if we just pay attention to that, I think we can begin to see that there's not only room, but that those young people among us are needed. So what happens in a congregation when they ignore their youth is the generation gap is wider and wider and wider. And once that starts, it's really difficult to stem that tide. And without the voices of younger people who say, why not? Or I could do that. Or, yeah, we tried it 20 years ago, but we haven't tried it now. Let's try something. Let's do it this way. And without that why not in a congregation, it's real easy for things to just settle into, how leaves kind of settle into the pile, kind of settles into the ground in the fall. And in a congregation, it takes a really long time for a church to die. That's the good news, right? It takes a really long time because there's little ways it can hold on. But I think there's nothing worse than a church that's dying and doesn't know it. And for those congregations, if they understand that they're past the point where they can turn that around, okay, no problem. You can either choose to be dead, like stinking dead, or you can choose to be compost for a new thing to grow because of the ground that you have enriched. So how do we help congregations become compost? There's all kinds of ways in which congregations can think about where life is for them.
I love that. That is beautiful. I'm assuming that's in one of the books about compost.
No, and it's not mine.
It should be. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. How do we help our churches become compost?
I think it's actually the Forum for Theological Exploration is where I got that. Yeah.
Beautiful. That is beautiful to think about that. And you're so right about the long, painful death of a church.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're just holding on by, if they're one of those people that happen to have an endowment,
Right.
The endowment is what's keeping the building open.
Right.
But what if you could go, okay, die well, and what we.
Mm-hmm. If things are too far past when a next generation will naturally assimilate into a congregation, let's think about intentionally using the resources and the time we have left to foster something, recognizing that church is never for the people who are inside of it. It's always for people who aren't yet inside, who aren't yet convinced. Those of us who are convinced of the efficacy of the gospel, church is not for us. Church is an opportunity, a tool, a gathering point for others.
Which I think is one of the hardest things to get a church to understand, that congregation, that this isn't for us, if we're catering to the wants of everyone in the congregation, then we're doing this wrong, kind of thing. Do you think that there's still a place for the traditional church, or does it?
I think it depends on, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So everything has been recycled, and I think whatever form of church is most authentic to the gathered community, that's what church should be. And recognizing the community's own rituals is important. There are some things that are that. There are also some things that are just habit. Rituals are life-giving, and habit is just suffocating. So recognizing the difference between those two, traditional church is often full of habits, and an enlivening congregation, a congregation that's thriving, is a congregation that has life-giving rituals. That might look like traditional church. It might look like something else. It just depends. I think the form is less important than the intent.
That's beautiful. I really do. So I have a question I didn't prepare you for. So what is one question or one thing that you wish someone would ask you? I want to give this information, I would love to, but there's never a space. So I'm inviting you. Here's a space. What do you want to share?
So I think one thing I would say is that one of the most costly things people ever do is pay attention and listen. And those are two really important things with regard to adolescence that people in our congregations, pastors, parents, those are the kinds of gifts that youth need. They need the gift of your attention. They need the gift of your listening ear, and giving space for adolescents to be who they are, to understand before judging, to be curious when something seems unusual. Those are the kinds of gifts that youth need. And I wish I could say to every congregation, just, this isn't rocket science. One of the things we overlook is how important, like, just everyone in the congregation living their faith is to the faith development of adolescents. And then just pay attention, just listen.
I think those are wonderful gifts that you offer everyone, and really important reminders for parents, as busy as we let ourselves get, is these gifts that are our children, and all they want is our time and our attention. So the final question is the one that I ask everyone. It's the joy question. So what about all these things that you do, because there are a ton, which is wonderful, but what brings you joy in your ministry?
So when I was in college, my advisor, I had switched majors, finished English major quicker than I thought, and needed something else to do. So I picked up a religious studies major, and my advisor, I was coming into my final year, my advisor was leaving on sabbatical, and I was not happy. And because I would have to find some way to do all those classes I was going to take with him. And as he was preparing to leave, he called me into his office and he said, now I know that while I'm gone, I'm going to need someone maybe to access this office and to send me a book from time to time or something like that. So I want you to have a key if you'd be willing to mail me a book. Now he's going to a major university. He didn't need me to mail any books, but he needed me to have a key to his office so I would have access to those resources. And by giving me that key, he also opened a door for me to see myself in a place where I might not have otherwise seen myself. What I do in my ministry is open doors. Give people keys so they can open the doors for themselves. Remove obstacles, whatever it takes, so people can follow their call. That's what I do at the School of Theology. I remove obstacles, I open doors, I give people keys.
And that's beautiful. Yes. And I thank you as someone who has been fortunate and, encountered her own doors, but also along the way had people who handed me the key to things that I never imagined otherwise. So I thank you for that ministry, and I thank you for your time. Dr. Janssen is going to be with us at Space for Grace in September, so we would invite people to come and meet with her there and buy her book, and I'm sure she'll sign it and have a conversation and all this. Again, I'll put her information down at the below the broadcast so that you can reach out to her on Facebook. And we thank everybody for watching today. And Dr. Janssen, I thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks everyone for watching.